Hello everyone, it's Ryan at GPI. Today I'm going to talk to you about our L99 Camshaft Package. We're going to go over the options, pretty much the standard stuff that we use, things we use in the shop, what we recommend. Let's get right into it. So all of our L99 cams, our shelf cam varieties are VVT. Probably over 10 years ago when we set out to design our own camshafts, L99 was the first thing we did actually. And the SS4 VVT was the first VVT cam we did. It started as a custom cam for my car, and then we wanted to adopt the VVT technology to try to preserve that low end power and be able to retard the cam up top for these L99 applications, be able to have that broad power curve. And it worked really well for us. It did have to be fly cut. It's the only one in our lineup that has to be fly cut of our shelf cams. So let's talk about the others real quick. SS1, the SS2, and SS3 VVT cams are probably the three most popular VVT cams out of the lineup. The SS1 cams always end up in the cars that customers prefer to leave the stock converter in. Don't get me wrong, it works best with an aftermarket converter. Even the factory cams work best with an aftermarket converter. The SS2 and SS3 cams, we do recommend going with an aftermarket converter, and we have the minimum converter specs published in those cam documents in our camshaft package on the website, so you can kind of defer to that and see what we recommend for RPM range on your converter for either of those cam applications, as well as the SS4. And the SS4 VVT is obviously a pretty good sized cam. Requires fly cutting, but it's more of a maximum effort VVT cam. Moving on, valve springs. Pretty much standard BTR 660s. If we're running a high ram setup or something where we may string the RPM out there into the upper 7,000s, we do offer our GPI 700 spring kit, which is a higher spring rate, more open pressure. We shim close to coil bind to get that valve train stability we need in the upper RPMs for those applications that need it. Push rods. We offer pretty much our GPI push rods, Manton, some comps, pretty much standard across the board, 5/16, 80 wall, chromoly push rods. Nothing super fancy there. The length will vary depending on what your combination is. Most are going to default to a 7/425. If the heads haven't been milled, 7/400 on some. And then if they're milling in thin gaskets, can vary that some more from there. Phaser limiter. The phaser limiter is our GPI L99 phaser limiter. It should be a 4-degree limiter on that, which pretty much all of our cams are designed to back up about 4 degrees in the upper RPMs. It doesn't need to retard further than 4 degrees. Lifters, pretty much our tried and true options are GMPP Race and the Johnson lifters. That's what we typically default to for all of our shop builds. Higher quality lifters. They are more expensive, but very, very low failure rate with them, and we prefer to only do things one time around here if at all possible. Number 6, head gaskets. We offer a variety of head gaskets depending on what your usage is and different thicknesses for different compression ranges. So OEM head gaskets, obviously 51 thousandths thick. The LS9 head gaskets, which have 2 additional layers, but are overall about the same thickness as the factory head gaskets are. And then SCE and Cometics, we offer those, and I think the SCEs are 39 thousandths thick, the Cometics are 40 thick. So depending on what your application is, if you're going to do a blower down the road, you may want to run the LS9 head gaskets. If you're going for more of a max effort NA deal, you may want to run the thinner SCE or Cometic head gaskets for your applications. Number 7, head bolts or studs, head hardware. OEM or ARP is pretty much what we rock with. You can do OEM bolts, you can do ARP bolts, or you can do ARP studs as well. Studs are nice if you're going to make some changes in the future. Since the studs go in there, it's easier to remove the heads and retorque the hardware with studs, in my opinion. Plus, I like the studs because when you torque a stud, you're torquing the nut to the stud. The stud should not be spinning in the block, so you're not pulling on the threads as you're tightening that bolt up, which aluminum blocks over time, as heads have been installed and removed, fasteners going in and out can pull the threads out sometimes. Studs help alleviate that some. Number 8, valley cover. L99s obviously have DOD or active fuel management. You can do the LS3 style or the truck style valley cover that has the O-rings in it to block those ports off. I think Summit has a reproduction of OEM style cover that we use sometimes as well. Or you can actually use the little DOD block offs. Most people don't do that. Most people like the cleaner look of the smooth valley cover. and I do tend to like that myself as well. Number 9, the crank bolt. 3 options pretty much: OEM, ARP, and Earls. Nothing fancy or noteworthy there, other than the Earls and the ARP are reusable and the OEMs are throwaway since they're torque to yield bolt. They're only one-time use bolts where you can get multiple uses out of the aftermarket bolts. Cam retainer plate. We recommend replacing the cam retainer plate, especially on vehicles that have a little bit higher mileage, because there is a seal that is made into the back of that basically seals up the main oil galley in the lifter tunnel there. For whatever reason, you know, if it has a lot of miles or it's been hot, you know, if it's been on and off a couple of times, that seal may be flattened out and you may get a poor seal once you crack that loose and go to put it back on, and you don't want to have an oil leak there because it can result obviously in a loss of oil pressure. If oil pressure gets low at the top of the engine, it's only going to get worse by the time the oil gets down to the lower end of the engine, to the mains and rods, and that's just no bueno. That's not good. Retainer plate bolts, pretty self-explanatory. The cam retainer plate bolts are Torx head, tapered seat deal. Typically, it feels like they were put on by an impact wrench, even though that most of the time people do torque them the right way. They just get really tight when they get torqued in there. Sometimes those may have to be removed with, you know, an impact driver or something like that, or they get damaged. It's just always good to have those guys on hand in case you damage the old ones getting them off. Pretty cheap insurance to go ahead and buy those. Valve cover gaskets. You may or may not need them. If your engine is low mileage, they're rubber. They're not bad about tearing up, but you know, if you need them, you know, we offer them in the kit if you do choose to option it with the gaskets, and most people probably do. The front timing cover seal, we use the GM one and we use one from Fast Fish, and the Fast Fish one is a Teflon coated. It's a little lower drag seal, a little higher quality than the OE seal. 90% of the people aren't going to need the Fast Fish seal unless they just want a better quality seal. It's not going to offer them any benefits, but for those other 10%ers that want maximum performance and want to reduce the drag, or if they're running a vacuum pump setup where they're pulling some vacuum on the crankcase, the Fast Fish seal is a little bit better. It will hold in there at higher vacuum. There are some benefits as you get more aggressive with the build with the Fast Fish seal versus the GM seal. Like I said, for most people on the L99 setup, the OEM seal is going to be perfectly fine. Timing cover gasket, it's optioned in there. You can select it or deselect it if you want. You may not tear your gasket up when you pull it off, or you may. You just don't ever know until you get in there and do it. So it's in there for you guys if you need it. Same with the water pump gaskets. I've done them before on my own car where I was very careful and I didn't have to replace the water pump gaskets, but there were times where I went to pull it off and the rubber tore on the gasket because of it was just stuck on there from being on there for a while from the heat cycles. Water pump gaskets are optional as well. Cam bolt, very important on the VVT stuff. The cam bolt is basically a hydraulic valve. That's what controls the VVT mechanism itself, the phaser. So it is a throwaway bolt. So essentially it's a one-time use bolt. You do need to get a new one when you put your VVT cam in. So definitely grab that when you option your package out. Lifter trays. You will need the lifter trays because deleting the AFM lifters, the AFM lifters use different lifter trays. These are standard LS3 style. You will need the lifter trays. Timing chain damper. It's optional. The L99s already come with a higher volume oil pump to meet the demands of a VVT and AFM engine from the factory. It's a much better oil pump than the LS3 oil pump is from the factory. If you're not changing your oil pump, you may not have a reason really to want to do the timing chain damper, but if you do want to run the little dog bone damper, you can certainly do that. Just know that you will have to remove the oil pump to do that. The only real upgrade for the oil pump is going to be the Melling 10355, and we just haven't found that it is absolutely necessary on most of the cam head builds. Bigger cubic inch builds or builds with different bearing clearances in the bottom end, obviously yes, we do run that pump sometimes, but a 10355 pump is not a have-to pump on a typical cam head stop bottom end build. So just recognize that the L99 oil pump is really good from the factory. Timing chain, OEM or the C5R K-Tech chain. OEM chain is going to be good for most people. If you have higher mileage and you feel like the chain may have stretched over time, as chains do, cheap insurance would be get a new chain. OEM is good for most scenarios. The K-Tech C5R is fairly well indestructible unless something else in the valve train breaks and causes that chain to break. They just don't fail, and that's why we offer it in our kit. It's super durable. Rocker arm trunnion upgrades. CHE has pretty much been our default, and also Smith Brothers and Manton makes good trunnion kits as well. The CHE and the Manton are full floating bushings that go in the rocker arm bodies. Trunnion shaft float in the bushing and the bushings float in the rocker. where the Smith brothers differ because the bushings get pressed into the rocker body and only the trunnion shaft floats inside the bushing. A little bit different. Some people prefer certain brands. We offer them all. We've had good success with all of them in the shop. We typically default to the CHEs, nothing against any of the other ones, but those have pretty much been our go-to. Other than that, you wrap things up with remote tuning if we can help you, or in-person tuning. We're glad to help complete the package from start to finish, get the thing tuned and dialed in for you, because who knows them better than us? We kind of made the package, so we're happy to help in any way we can. If you have any questions, anything you need help with on optioning out a camshaft package, hit us up in our support channels, whether it's live chat on our website, support email, give us a ring. It's a busy time of year. Everybody's planning right now. We certainly appreciate your patience. Thanks in advance for that. Go Team GPI. Thanks. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, and comment below. Also, give us a follow on our social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. As always, we appreciate you guys, and we'll see you again next time.